It's a party.
Wonder if we've seen any of them multiple times.
And we are very excited to
I
receive so
think
many
we're probably moving
messages.
faster than they can.
Do you think we're like scaring them off the seafloor, or are they just floating there?
No, I think they're all just the pelagic.
Yeah, we're not really near the seafloor, so we shouldn't be disturbing. We're not trawling with Argus.
Nope.
Not yet, at least, fortunately.
I'm gonna try not to do that.
Not anymore.
And there's another one.
Oh, no, that's one we saw before. I recognize that one.
Yeah.
What was the Zeke? What was the first one's name?
Oh shoot!
I thought it was Squeak, wasn't it?
Squeak.
Yeah.
Was it Squeak?
Squeak.
Or did I just mishear? Is Zeke or Squeak? I thought it was Squeak, but it could have been
Oh,
Squeak.
Squeak is better.
Someone out there knows their truth.
I don't know. If you squish a pelagic sea cucumber, does it squeak? I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that.
And no one's around to hear it. Does it make a sound?
Yeah, but I'm guessing no one's ever tried that.
Every time someone brings that question up, I usually just mention something about, you know, without someone's eardrums able to turn the vibrations into actual, like the sound waves into something that you would consider an actual sound. Technically, no.
Well, but so would earthquakes still exist if we didn't have the sonographs that measure them? I mean, the sound waves still are sound waves.
Yeah, they're still
even if you're not recording.
It's still there, but
earthquakes still do damage if nobody hears it.
But the question about someone hearing it is if you don't have that interpretation of your brain picking up.
Oh, I see.
Realizing it's sound.
No, the question is if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one around to hear it, does it still make a sound? Not.
It makes a sound wave.
I think that depends on your definition of sound.
Yeah. I'm not considering a sound wave a sound.
Oh, well, I guess that's the question then.
Oh, interesting. So how far away is Argus from the ship?
3,100.
No, in depth, but in like distance behind.
Oh, behind.
Oh, behind.
From my point of view, about 3 inches.
Yeah, depending on the scale of your chart. No, we're at 830 meters.
Wow.
Okay.
But if you think about if we were using a deep tow fish that was designed to tow like that, it would be quite a bit more because they're designed to kite out, whereas Argus is just an ROV that's meant to hang heavy below the. But also, this operation's working better because the OET engineers designed a fin that's on the back of Argus to help stabilize it in the water.
Mm-hmm. Do we have a way to measure the current of the seafloor?
No, the best way with ROVs to do that without having a current meter on board is to just observe the direction and speed that the marine snow is falling, which isn't ideal because we're also moving, but there really doesn't seem to be much sideways movement of it.
Oh.
I know a lot of times a way people measure currents is they'll actually have an instrument that tracks the particles in the water, assuming that the particles are moving at the same speed that the water is, and use that kind of as a proxy.
Yep, acoustic Doppler current profilers.
Yeah. And we have something similar on Herc, not exactly the same, that we use for its speed and direction over the seafloor, that sometimes actually gets messed up, confused when there's a strong current running under it. It looks like Herc is moving when we're actually holding position. But yeah, we just have Argus right now, so.
Yeah, the problem with those current profilers when they're on moving vehicles is you have to account for the movement of the vehicle in the water.
Yeah.
Becomes a much harder problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially when you have everything we were talking about with the heave. We're towing it behind us, sometimes moving laterally.
So another question from a student is, what are the black areas on the orange screen? And they're basically the distance between the seafloor and Argus.
Yeah,
Right.
the blind spot that we have with the scanner under Argus that we're trying to compensate for with the camera, which is covering a good chunk of it, enough that it would be more difficult to hide large objects in those small slivers of blind spots. And then if it's in the large orangish brown, like the dark spot that's on there right now, it's a shadow behind what looks like a rock.
Mm-hmm. So how can people judge the size of the objects in the sonar monitor? It's hard to say, right?
So yeah, so since we're going so slowly, they're a little stretched out vertically, but in terms of width, there are those scale bars on the top. So the higher frequency, the 600 kilohertz, on the top goes by increments of 10 all the way out to 100 meters on the edge there. And then on the bottom, the 300 kilohertz goes by increments of 20, and it goes to about 150, I believe. So you can look at the width and then kind of just try to picture in your mind for what the actual length is.
How far away from land are we? That's another question from students.
That's a solid question. I can get you an exact number in a moment here.
Okay, let me check.
Is that another sea cucumber?
Cucumber count was continued through my shift.
That's
Okay,
neat.
thank you.
We are a little over 10 nautical miles away.
Okay, thanks. And now we have a question about our responsibility of each one of us and on our shift. So I am Valeria, and I am in charge of the communications on my shift. And also I do live interactions with students like you that want to have a specific chat with us for 20 minutes to half an hour. So that's what I do.
Uh-oh, our video person.
Oh, Steve is
out.
gone. But Steve Matter is our video engineer. He is in control of all the cameras. There'd be a lot more if we had Herc in the water. He also controls what's going out on the feeds and will occasionally change what we see in our quad view to get a better understanding of what we're doing.
I'm the Argus pilot, so for this particular mission, my main job is kind of making sure that we're keeping the vehicle the right distance above the seafloor and facing into the line that we're towing, and keeping the vehicle generally just safe. When we're doing dives with Herc, I also kind of assist the Herc pilot with things and slightly different objectives, I guess, in what I'm doing. But
Michael Hannaford. I'm the Herc pilot, and so I guess now I'm assistant to the Argus pilot.
Chris Jakes, I'm the navigator. So
Speed
Navigator is the communication link between the control van and everyone here and the bridge. So whenever we need to tow Argus in a line, or if we have Herc in the water and we want to go look at different targets, I will make sure that the bridge knows where we need to be and that we get there quickly, but also safely for the vehicles in the water.
I'm Mike Brennan. I'm the co-lead scientist for this expedition and the watch leader for the 48 watch. So multiple roles. First of all is to, I worked with Russ Matthews and the Air Sea Heritage Foundation to develop the project. I'm a maritime archaeologist with Search Inc. And we kind of put this together and so generally overseeing the plan and the historical research that went into all this and determining the tools we wanted to use and sort of the step-by-step process of putting in survey lines and conducting the survey and then later on diving on targets to on the smaller scale, watch to watch, kind of just monitoring the side scan and interpreting and dropping targets and making sure we're all kind of on the same page with what the plan's going to be, even as we change it.
Hi, Steve and class. This is Dee Dee Marks. So I'm glad that I came up a little early for my shift since I've known Steve for a while, and glad I can provide some more information to his class. So good morning for me, but afternoon for you. My name is Dee Dee Marks. I'm a maritime archaeologist, and I am here assisting with the operations to find the Samoan Clipper through using the side scan sonar and hopefully putting Hercules in the water and being able to help interpret the remains that we see on the seafloor.
And I'm Rebecca. I'm one of 3 individuals on the ship that rotate through the data logger position. So part of my job is, as targets are identified by the scientist, I record information about them, both electronically and on paper, such as coordinates, a description, where the file name is, which target number this is, etc., which will be useful later when the scientists go back and re-examine the data or if we pass over the target objects again. We aren't doing any sampling on this dive because Argus doesn't have that capability, so we don't have Hercules in the water. But usually when Hercules does dive, we bring back geological and biological samples, and then so outside of the control van where we are now, I help process, catalog, and characterize the different samples that is brought back to the ship before shipping them out to scientists across the world or to national archives.
So Dee Dee, I think since you're here, can you tell us how much of a distance had the Samoan Clipper have to go, like on the surface of the ocean before taking off?
Unfortunately, she and I are not one of the ones who could probably answer that. The other 3 in our science team are probably the ones who can answer that.
Oh, okay.
We're not.
I just got the question because I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed from just waking up, I guess.
Because
yeah.
I passed on as a guy.
Oh.
I said Russ, Megan, or Lonnie, of course, and you're the one who shows up.
Yes. So give the idea for the students, the Samoan Clipper was like a float plane that you see today. So it landed and took off on the water, which is quite an amazing thing to think about, something that size. So I imagine it needed a pretty good run.
Target here, guys.
We usually get that every day.
Needed a pretty good run to get enough speed,
30 meters port,
especially taking off with all of the fuel and supplies that were on board.
One quick answer, I can't give you an exact number, but we know that they were trying to land in the bay, the harbor, going into Pongo Pongo. So however long that stretch is, that was long enough for them.
Rebecca, what target number is this?
43.
43.
Yeah, and we have a very smart follower also.
Do you have a description for this target?
Oh, wait, let's just
Possible
type
straight
this.
lines and with some shadow.
And can you pull that screen up a little bit so I can see the file name?
Oh yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
You good with this?
No, not quite. I just need to
Okay.
record the coordinates real quick.
Huh?
So to all of Steve's class there, we are using side scan sonar to map the seafloor to locate remains of the Samoan clipper, and this is the same technology
Right, I'm
that
good.
Stockton University has available to teach the students as well. So you never know, one day we might have a Stockton University graduate serving on board the Nautilus.
Yeah. So yeah, the eyewitness was in a boat when it was a lady, right, that witnessed the crash.
Yeah, I believe it was a local woman.
Mm-hmm.
So a local woman who was out fishing, I believe, spotted the Samoan clipper as it was descending down, and we have those eyewitness reports to assist with the locational information that we're using to plan our survey. She also reported the slow descent and eventual location of the Samoan clipper on the sea surface, and relayed that the large wing structure was intact before it finally sank. So that's the main feature that we're keeping an eye out for, which was 118 feet long, so a pretty significantly sized object we're hoping to find, or large pieces of that object.
Yeah, thanks for that. We have also some students asking about what college did we go to. So I did my undergrad in Ecuador, in Quito, Ecuador, Catholic University there, and then I did my master's at UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, where I did environmental science and management with a specialization in coastal marine resilience and management and environmental strategic communications. Hashtag Go Gauchos. What about you, Steve? What college did you go to?
Oh, I studied film and television at Boston University for my bachelor's degree, and I studied at the University of the West of England for a master's in wildlife filmmaking.
That's awesome.
Sorry, we got transitions. So
Oh
we
yeah,
got
we're about
hand over
to
here.
switch our watch. So thanks for following us. You're gonna hear some chatting here, some noise, it's people arriving with their coffees and everything. This is a little bit, yeah, 10 to 8. So they're catching up with what's happening, what has happened in this last watch.
I guess since I'm starting my next watch, I'll continue on answering the question about
Yes.
where I went to school.
Yes, please do.
So I did an undergraduate degree in political science, of all things, from University of San Diego, and sort of didn't really know about the field of maritime or underwater archaeology until I took a class in it as an elective my last semester of my senior year, and thought, hey, this is great. I enjoy the history part more than the legal aspect, and did some research, took a semester off, and ended up going to East Carolina University, which is in Greenville, North Carolina. And they have a graduate program in maritime archaeology and maritime history. So that's where I went to, and there's relatively few universities and colleges within the United States that offer specialties like that. Other ones are Texas A&M. They do a lot of work in the Mediterranean on ancient shipwrecks. Florida State University also has a fantastic program, and they do a lot of paleo or prehistoric work, which is a growing field, so we definitely need some more specialty in that. University of Miami has a fairly new program, so that's another one to keep your eyes out. University of Hawaii has a certificate program as well. So those are sort of the biggies for the U.S., but there's also additional overseas opportunities as well. Southampton has a program. There's one in Haifa, Israel, and I believe there's a new one in Malta, but I'm surely leaving a few out just because I can't remember them.
Great. Becca, are you still there? No. No. Okay.
I know Steve had a question about the size of our survey area and sort of how long it's taking us and what our plan is. Each of our survey lines are 2 miles long with a line spacing of 200 meters. So we have about a 2 square mile survey area that we are in the middle of. I think we're maybe, I think we're a little over 50% at this point. We're about 2 hours to complete a line, and then it takes a little bit longer to turn and get everything back online again to move on to our next line. So we're slowly chugging away, and have been at it about 2 days, give or take a little bit. So we'll continue surveying like this through the rest of the day. And then look at our targets, do some processing of the sonar data, and see where we want to go.
Yeah. So how many targets do we have so far now? Over 40?
Looks like we're on 44 now, so we have 43.
Okay. Yeah, the scanning of this area takes several days, so that's why our status is basically the same has been the same from the very first day of this expedition. this is how science works, right? We need to be patient and like be strategic about the use of our resources. That's why we need to scan first, and then we're gonna send Hercules once we have some targets for possible dive sites.
So to Steve and his class that are joining us from New Jersey, we are using the same methodologies as you might be familiar with the Robert J. Walker project that Steve was instrumental in. We're using first the side scan sonar to look for targets of interest. Once we have those, we're going to use a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, to go down to the seafloor and check out those targets and see what they are and do a more close order investigation. So similar techniques are used around the world and in all various depths of water to locate archaeological remains.
Good morning, everyone. Long time no see.
Morning, Maddie.
Good morning.
Am I the only one that's had coffee?
Good morning.
Hot coffee just takes a while to kick in.
Good morning.
Right. Cool. So I'm just doing a status update on the site. How many have we found? Any more targets, or what's the current update?
We have 43 for now.
For now.
For now.
So when we left, we were on 34. So they added a few more after we got off last night at midnight.
Awesome. And what line are we currently on?
We're about to finish line 6.
50 gig left.
What was that second part?
Yeah.
I mean, we're on line number 6, but I don't know how many lines we did so far. Yeah. I think Miles is looking.
Miles knows this.
We're finishing up our 10th line.
Ooh.
I heard it though. Yeah, might have been.
Before we lose our students from New Jersey, I just wanted to give them a little overview of what they're seeing on the 4 monitors that are being broadcast from Nautilus. The top left, the yellowish orange, is the waterfall from the side scan sonar. That's what brings back the acoustic data that is being transmitted to the seafloor. The bottom left is the survey from HYPACK, which is a navigational and hydrographic survey software that is used to plan the lines and to direct the ship and the navigational crew where to go. So the ship, you can see, is just almost at the end of the red line. The red line is the one that we're on, and the black ones are the ones we have already done. I'm not sure if you can see it in your resolution. Below that are little green hashed lines. Those are the ones we have not done yet. Trailing behind the ship is a little box with green squigglies behind it. That is Argus, which the side scan sonar as well as a camera system is mounted on. So that's following behind. So that's that screen. The top right is the video camera that is on Argus. So one thing that makes this a little unusual from typical surveys is that we do have a camera filling in the gap that's right underneath the sonar system. Typically you have a dead space where you're blind, where you can't see anything, but we're lucky enough to have a camera system to see the bottom and see the area directly under us. And then the bottom right is where we have live web interactions with different organizations.
The viewers at home do not see the same bottom right in the quad that we do. They have another map generated at ISC.
Great, and we do have people joining in from all over the world looking at the map right now. We have some viewers in American Samoa, so hey, all, we're just right over the way. We're also looking at viewers from Australia, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Turkey, Germany, the Netherlands, Canada, the UK, and the US. So thanks for joining us this morning here at American Samoa time.
Talofa.
This has been a question that we've been asked a few times, and you know, given the depth that the Samoan Clipper, that we believe that it's located at, is there potential for natural forces to have maybe interfered with the preservation? Specifically, a viewer asked about the 2009 earthquake.
There are definitely natural forces that could affect what we are finding on the bottom, mainly due to how the Samoan Clipper might have broken up at the surface, and once leaving the seafloor, the wave action for a little while and currents would distribute that material depending on the weight and the size of it. Once it's at the bottom, we're fairly deep. We're at about 3,200 meters. So it's pretty calm. It's pretty nice place to be down on the seafloor. So there should not be much additional natural forces being placed on it. There might be a little bit of sedimentation, but not very much. Nothing that would impede us finding remains. I'm not sure about the earthquake. That's a good question. I imagine if there were remains sitting in an area that had a rift open up, that could affect it. but that's an interesting thought to think about.
And Russ, talofa is hello in the local greeting, right?
Yes, that's what I'm. That's what I understand. Is that talofa is Samoan for hello. So hello to everyone in Samoa and American Samoa.
How many languages can everyone in here say hello in? Do we have? I think I have like bonjour. Maybe an hola. Buenos dias.
I have merhaba.
Right.
What language is that in?
It's Turkish.
Hey, you guys are taking all of mine.
I could say it in Czech. Dobrý den. Good morning.
And Fijian is bula.
Aloha.
Oh, good one.
Nice.
Hello, German.
So we are currently still conducting our side scan sonar of the seafloor, looking for potential targets that may be indicative of the Samoan Clipper wreckage site. And then after we finish up sort of this lawnmower pattern, we are going to go back down with Argus and maybe look in more detail at the sites, and then bring Hercules as well to sort of get a better visual, a better description of exactly what we're looking at. And Didi, when we're looking at the side scan sonar, how much ground does that cover? Is it, you know, a small chunk of space, or are we looking at meters or hundreds of meters?
So the side scan sonar has different settings that you can tell it how far you want it to see out from either side. There are 2 transducers mounted on Argus right now, and each of those is sending out a signal at a slightly diagonal pattern, excuse me, still waking up. So there's also 2 frequencies that it can transmit to give us different images. So on the top of the screen is a high frequency, and the bottom is a low frequency. The high frequency right now is set at 100 meters, so it is sending that signal out at 100 meters on each side. The low frequency is set to 150 meters, so we have a total coverage of 300 on the bottom and 200 on the top. The blind spot, the black line or the nadir that you see on your screen, is the dead space, but we are filling that in for the most part with the camera that is on Argus right now. So that's giving us a view of the seafloor as we pass over it.
And Suna, you've been logging sort of things as Argus sees. How do you characterize the seafloor? I mean, are we looking at sediment or mud or rocks?
It looks like we're looking at a sandy, muddy sediment. And we see occasionally basalt rocks or more whitish carbonate crusted rocks. Sometimes it gets pretty steepy, and we occasionally come across almost little seamount creatures. And then we can also see that structure in the side scan sonar. But usually it's, yeah, mostly sandy, muddy sediment with scattered rocks.
And is this seafloor, is it sort of similar to other areas of the world located at this depth, you know, in maybe volcanic regions, or is this unique to where we are right now?
I think this is similar to the other places that we've dove on this area. We've been diving on seamounts, and the base of the seamounts usually start like this, and then we start seeing rocks, rocky slopes. We've been seeing almost inclusively basalt rock mounts and reliefs with occasional carbonate rocks, yeah.
And I believe Allison answered this question last shift, maybe, that the Samoan Islands are part of a volcanically active area, and so a lot of those basalt and carbonate rocks that we're seeing were probably the result of an eruption at some point or other in history.
Yeah, especially when we're climbing mount features, we could see that the lava flow structures on these rocks. So that was much more clear that there was some kind of eruption at some time.
And I don't know if the region is necessarily still volcanically active, but I think the last time it was recorded activity was at the turn of the 20th century, so a little over 120 years ago. And if we're working with, so a couple of questions, I think for you, Dee Dee. You know, as we're looking at this side scan sonar, and we can pick up these rocks that sort of look like blips, right? Those bright yellow blips. What are we looking for in terms of any sort of remains of the plane? Would it be, you know, those similar bright lights? Would it be different in shape?
So what we are looking for is objects that appear man-made or different from the surrounding environment. So as we've been surveying along, we're getting a better feel for what the bottom looks like and what the geology looks like. And we are looking for something that is not round, is not natural looking. Mother Nature doesn't really make straight lines or right angles. So those are the types of material that we're hoping to locate, the straight lines and right angles, as well as a different material type. Aluminum, like the Samoan Clipper was built out of, is one example. For shipwrecks, it could be iron or steel. Those types of materials have a different acoustic signature that shows up. So we are looking for anything that kind of looks unusual, out of the ordinary, different than the background, and those are the targets that we are choosing. And we have 43 of them so far to go back and assess and think about for putting some cameras on them.
Cool, and are any of those 43 targets looking particularly exciting, more than others maybe?
I definitely think there's a few. There was one yesterday that is sort of top on my list, but we're going to sit down as a group and go through those after they've been processed a little bit by Mike, and see where we go from there.
And something else to look for, and what really caught our attention with this other target is the shadow. So you see the you know, the object, the solid object turns out, you know, shows up as this, you know, bright yellow patch, and then if there's black to the side, you know, away from the source of the signal, it's kind of it's the equivalent of a sound shadow behind it. And what's interesting, what gets our attention is when there's something that seems to be sticking up, you know, giving more relief from the bottom. So just one, you know, kind of yellow shape without much of a shadow means that it's kind of resting, you know, flat with the bottom. But if there's a long shadow left by it, that it means something is sticking up from the seabed, and that's what we would expect from, you know, from Samoan Clipper, that there'd be pieces of structural members and things, or propellers, or things that would stick out and be proud off the bottom of the seabed.
And as we're looking at this muddy floor, are we concerned at all that the Clipper may have been covered up over time? And if so, to what extent can sonar maybe penetrate mud?
Well, I think the fact that we're seeing these rocks, you know, that have been deposited here long ago, is a good indication that we're not too concerned that Samoan Clipper, which is, you know, relatively recent, certainly in geologic terms, you know, has only been down for 81 years. So there's not a real concern, you know, among us that the wreck site has been covered.
And then just sort of looking at, you know, next steps. So, Didi, once you all have this opportunity to process the data and decide what these targets are, will we be sending Argus back down first, or will we be bringing Hercules along this time?
I think the working plan while we have Argus in the water is to maneuver the ship and Argus back over some of these targets. It's a relatively slow process to bring the equipment back up again and back down again, so we should maximize our time, and it's easy enough for the ship to slowly move over one of those targets. So once we've done that, if we see something we like, we will bring up Argus and reattach it to Hercules, which is a several-hour process potentially, and bring them back down with Hercules taking the lead with the higher, fancier camera systems and lighting and all of that. So that's where I think we're going.
Yeah, it's a unique advantage that we have with the fact that we're using Argus in this manner, that Argus is primarily intended to be, you know, a lighting and camera platform and essentially a tether management system for Hercules, but it is equipped with this downward-looking camera, and so you know, since it's already 3,000 meters down and in position, that it's a relatively simpler matter to just maneuver the ship as we're making our way north to go run some more survey lines, that we can direct Argus, you know, to pass directly over these objects, and we can get a visual on them and get a sense, are they natural or are they man-made? And if we see something that looks you know, to be aircraft wreckage, then we'll know we're in the right spot, and it'll be time to reintegrate Hercules and do a more thorough investigation. But we want to try and get that confirmation first, you know, using the tools that we have with Argus.
And this might be a good question for the ROV team. What are some of the key differences between Argus and Hercules when it comes to tasks and sort of, you know, what their job is?
I guess the first thing I'd point out is our ability to maneuver with Hercules versus Argus. Argus, we have control over the up and down motion and also our heading with 2 thrusters, whereas Hercules can move around in different directions. It also has 2 arms that we can use if need be. It has higher resolution cameras and some of more technology for if we find something. And then when we use Argus in tandem, we use Argus sort of as a helps release strain on the tether, which is important, and also can give us some views of Hercules that can help with how we pilot the vehicle.
And when it comes to controlling the two, do we have separate ROV pilots for Hercules and for Argus? And how do you guys kind of maneuver both of them around?
So we typically have two pilots, one for Argus, one for Hercules, and we work in tandem to make sure that we're the correct distance apart, that we have situational awareness so we know where objects are, and just sort of keeping an eye on each other. And again, it helps with the tether management. We don't want too much strain on Hercules' tether, and this way we have more control over Hercules' movements.
Right, and that's kind of a wild visual too, that both of the ROVs are tethered more or less to the ship in some way, right? I mean, that's a lot of cable going out, 3,000 meters worth. Pretty impressive.
So the ship has just reached the end of the line, but we are waiting for Argus to do a little catch-up and finish the line while we head south to our next line, which will be line 5.
And that bottom left quadrant is showing us sort of where the ship is moving and where Argus is moving, right?
That is correct. The ship is a little ship-shaped gray object just at the very end of the line, and Argus is a square diamond that is a little ways behind. Argus's track is the light green color that you can see, and it's jumping all around a little bit. I've been told that the positioning system is affected by the bow thrusters of the ship, so we're just having a little noise interference. So Argus is not really jumping around the way that it shows it on the screen, but it's following behind.
And about how far behind the ship is Argus? Do we have an idea? And sort of, you know, what are the benefits from having Argus at that distance rather than maybe closer to the ship?
Argus is currently about 700 meters back, and there's no benefit. It's just sort of the nature of towing through the water.
And I think this question is maybe referencing an earlier watch, but Dee Dee, you might know what they're talking about better than I do. Someone had mentioned compensating the sonar data for the heave of the ship. Do you know what kind of sensors are used to collect that data, you know, that's sort of tracking and documenting the heave of the Nautilus?
Yeah, so the side scan is definitely affected by the movement of the vessel. There's not so much you can do for that. That's why weather conditions and sea conditions are a very important aspect to take into consideration when operating this equipment. The software does allow for some smoothing of this data, but you know, we are still at the whim of Mother Nature sometimes when you say yay or nay to making a call about continuing operations.
Yeah, I think I was sitting in on that watch, and it was Mike Brennan was describing the process that he's going to put this you know, this data through, and to try and smooth it out, as Dee Dee said, and from what I understand, that this software and this system is not normally designed to move at this speed. We're going a bit slower than they would normally utilize it, and so I think what this program will do is it can take the position information, you know, at what point each thing was taken, and then process it so that you know, consolidate it so that we don't get that stretching effect. I don't know how much it can do really for the heave, but it's really more about compensating for the speed of the ship.
That is correct.
And then, oh, go ahead.
No, I'll just say that's perfect. I totally agree.
Awesome. I love it when that happens. You know, obviously we're using this data, but where does it go once we're done with this expedition? Does it contribute to some broader, you know, central system of understanding?
Definitely. This data, the side scan as well as all of the Argus imagery, is available for other scientists to use. They might use it for geologic work, for the habitat mapping, for species assessments, things like that, and definitely the video captures for the different organisms that we have been seeing. So while we're having a focus of archaeology for this project, we gather all the data, and it is available for any and all disciplines to utilize in their specific field.
Can we zoom on this?
Sure, go ahead.
Huh.
Are we able to pull screenshots from any of the sites that we've marked already?
Yes, we have images of those targets that we have found so far saved as JPEG images at this point.
I believe our data loggers are also getting screen caps from the, getting still images of the, you know, from the downward-looking camera, as well as we pass over interesting geologic features or sea life.
Cool.
Part of the processing is those images will be re-screen captured, if that makes any sense. But the images will look a lot better. So they're pretty rough and dirty, and so we'll have updated, better imagery to share with everyone later today.
Awesome.